Hi there. Grab a cuppa, take a seat, come and meet your health coach. Brought to you by vitalhealthcoaches.com. Hello and welcome to today's episode. My name is Clare Sharpen, I'm your host, and today I am really delighted to welcome Joy Donnell to the episode. Joy is a health and wellbeing coach who specialises working with women with high functioning anxiety. So I've got a feeling we're going to put the world to rights today, Joy. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Claire. It's great to be here.
So Joy, could you start just by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so currently my life as is, I live in the New Forest, literally in the middle of the New Forest with two Hungarian terrorist dogs and my husband. And I'm also a step parent and step grandparent. So I have two youngsters running around frequently, 6 and 10-year-old, that keep us very active and very fit. You usually find me somewhere either out on the water or out amongst the trees when I'm not working. So I'm a kite surfer, paddleboarder, sea swimmer. I have swum in the Avon a couple of times here, but it's not my thing. I prefer the sea, oddly enough.
Mhm.
And my background, when I left school, I went to a very progressive school and I joined the army for 10 years. So I was in a very male-dominated environment for quite a long time. And then when I came out of the army, I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll be a personal trainer, and as you tend to do. So I did that for a few years, and then sort of progressed into very heavily male-dominated environments, such as waste management, and eventually started a company with a colleague, and we had a very fast-growing company, which is where I realized I was experiencing high-functioning anxiety and burnout myself. And as a result of that, and also having 60 employees, probably about 40 of them under the age of 25, realizing that the bulk of my job was about managing people who at the time I thought, why can't they just do their job? And realizing that the youngsters suffered a lot with high functioning anxiety as well. So I began to training as a psychotherapist. And eventually, having done that for 10 years, I then moved into health and wellbeing coaching because I realized there's a transition that comes post therapy where people have dealt with, whatever their past issues have been, that there's nothing for them to move into. And I think as a health coach, that's where we add value, is we're helping people take their lives from their past to the present to the future life that they want. So yes, that's where I came from. That's where I'm going to. Live a very healthy, active life personally. I couldn't imagine not being healthy and active. But I also have, this passion for just being calm and being relaxed, which sounds a little odd. But when I don't get my daily dose of green, my daily dose of sunlight, all the simple things that make life, just whole. And to me, that's my feeling of success. So I've had lots of successes in my life, but actually the one that I cherish most is being in nature and being able to enjoy it and enjoy it fully. So that being active and well for me.
Well, it sounds like you achieved that being in the middle of the New Forest.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So I'd love to hear more about how your personal experiences shape your work in trauma, burnout, and specifically high functioning anxiety.
Yeah, so when I founded the company originally, co-founded the company, I never anticipated that being an employer, I would experience burnout. I'd experienced it as an employee in a very male-dominated, misogynistic environment, which was to be expected, to be fair. But what I didn't realise is you could experience it as somebody who was owning and running a company as well. And what it came back to was, for me, was some of the things I hadn't dealt with about my past, which I then went on to deal with, but also about having my values aligned with. And sometimes when you're a business owner, you can't always be in full value alignment, not in a fast growing business when you've got other people involved. So as a result of that, what I saw in myself and started to see in other women was that we are, we tend to be the backbone of everything in society, but we don't value our own contribution. We don't value what we have to offer. We don't see what our successes bring. We just move on to the next thing. we are people pleasers, we are perfectionists. And then when it all goes horribly wrong, we procrastinate. And I experienced all of those things to the point where I had no passion for my own business. I had no love for my own business. I loved what it stood for, but I had to mold myself into something I really didn't belong in that life anymore. So that it had to change. It had to change. So I came out of the business, did a successful exit, and that's when I changed direction.
And so it seems like many people don't recognize high functioning anxiety because they seem successful on the outside, like you've described. So
Yeah.
what do you mean by high functioning anxiety? How can someone tell if they have it, and what are the costs of that, I guess?
So again, I'll use myself as an example, but I see this in many of my clients. They can turn up and manage and run anything. They are highly effective, highly efficient. They get stuff done. These are the women that they will see risks like 20 miles down the road before it even happens. They anticipate it, they cover the potholes, and everybody thinks they're great and they're celebrating. They don't ever stop to celebrate their success. They go to bed at night, they can't sleep, or if they do sleep, they wake up and they're replaying conversations. They're planning continuously. I actually had a client come to me and she said, I'm waiting for my diagnosis of ADHD. And I said, I'm curious. Can you tell me more? And actually, all of the symptoms that she was presenting with were high functioning anxiety. So she was suffering with high blood pressure. She was suffering with high cholesterol. So she had the physical symptoms, but she also had the psychological symptoms. When we unpicked all of that, she never felt safe. She never felt safe at home. She never felt safe at work. And I said, is there anywhere in the world where you do feel safe? She went, when I'm with my horse. And actually that physiological connection with something that didn't want anything from her, just wanted to be present, made her realize actually it wasn't ADHD that she had. She had high functioning anxiety. And it was coming out in different ways. But she was at the top of her game. She was a very well-paid woman, still is. But she had no recognition that she was suffering with anxiety, with stress. She would forecast, plan. I mean, she was just an amazing person to have at the helm. But the reality was she was in control of every aspect of everything going on around her all the time. And that is all consuming. It's exhausting. In its extremes, it can be debilitating. So it can prevent you from taking action because you procrastinate. And then the perfectionist traits that tend to come through, people start to think, but she always does it so good, I can't meet her demands. So they don't even try. So people around you start to fall away. Your relationships start to suffer. And then you go into the sort of procrastination or the people pleasing. You tend to flip between the three. I want to be liked, I want to be part of the tribe, but I also want to be in control. So you've got these flip-flop behaviors that go on, but ultimately it comes out in physiological signs before someone generally does something about it. And that would be the blood pressure, the lack of sleep, or I've got insomnia, drinking my own. I didn't recognize myself as drinking a bottle of wine a night. Thought that was quite normal for a high functioning executive. And it was only when my husband, who doesn't drink, said, I'm not taking the bottles to the bottle bank again. This is your turn. And there was over 30 bottles in there. And that was just over a month's worth. At that point, I thought, okay, that's got to change. Something has to stop. So when you have those behaviors that become so ingrained, but you don't recognize that they are destructive, that's when you're in that high functioning anxiety cycle.
Or you might have a recognition or an explanation, like you said, of the ADHD, or it's just what I do if I like to drink a bottle of wine a night, or whatever the I wouldn't use the word excuse, but rationalization, I guess, would be.
Yeah, it's a justification of somebody sent me a text this morning, and it said something along the lines of, but I drink to relax. And I said, okay, and how do you feel the following morning or the following 2 to 3 days? Because, the studies will show us that if you drink alcohol, your heart rate variability, which is let's say your flexibility of your heart to respond, or your nervous system to respond to stress, becomes depressed. So it drops, it goes much lower. And that can be anywhere up to 5 days, depending on how much alcohol you drink and the type of alcohol you drink. So if it's doing that, and you can see that on a fitness tracker, what else is it doing that you can't see? So you're taking all of these behaviors, justifying them because it makes, alcohol makes me relax. Does it really make you relax? Because it's a depressant. So what emotions are you ignoring? What feelings are you ignoring that you need alcohol to suppress those, to enable you to, I'll say, relax in quotes? And then how do you feel, the following few days? Or do you drink again because you don't feel good and it's hair of the dog? And then we're into a functional alcoholic status that you have to drink every day to maintain a state of how you feel.
And I'm interested in how that contrasts with your example of the lady who recognized that when she's with her horse, she feels safe. Do you think all your clients have a sense of when I'm out on the water or when I'm swimming or when I'm walking? Do we all really know that one or more places where we're safe? Or for some people, is that so lost that they don't even know what or where that is anymore?
I think it's both. I think, you've hit the nail on the head. Some people inherently know it could be a cupboard. I actually had a client quite a long time ago who used to go and hide in a cupboard. That was it. It was a man. That was the only place he felt safe. But generally, when you're in an environment where you won't be judged, so obviously animals generally don't judge you, they just want to be next to you. If you're in nature, as long as you don't have that feeling of agoraphobia. So it's things that satisfy the external senses that allow you to connect with yourself internally. But not everybody can recognize that. And also, when they do feel that sense of safety, it's just so strange to them that it has to be repeated time and time and time and time again, particularly if they've got adverse childhood events that have happened and they've never had psychological safety. It's a difficult one to pin down. So as a therapist, I would always, when I was working in trauma, always work with people to establish safety first. So they always had something or somewhere to go. And it's not just physical, it's psychological. And then as a coach, even now, I still teach all the breathing techniques, meditation, anything that makes a person feel safe within themselves. So anxiety blankets. For some people, it might be aromatherapy. Other people, it might be music. It's things that connect the senses back to the self and allow, the client or the person to experience whatever they're feeling in the moment. Because most of us try not to be in the moment because that's where the discomfort is.
It strikes me one of the other things that can come out with people struggling with this kind of thing is stress related eating. So, what would you say is happening there, and what are some of the misconceptions about the connection between anxiety, high functioning anxiety, like you've been described, and weight gain?
So I always remember growing up with my mum telling me stress made you thin. Isn't that a strange concept? Oh yeah, she lives on her nerves. I used to think,
Yeah, and you imagine a thin, wiry.
yeah, thin, wiry, very hyped person. And the experience I've had over the last couple of years is complete opposite of that. Is I've been doing recently some more work with people who've had gastric band surgery and gastric sleeve and haven't lost weight. They've lost a little bit, of course, when they first had the surgery, probably 3 or 4 stone of the 7 or 8 that they intended to lose, and then it stops. And then when we've started to unpick, how their life is being lived, how they feel about themselves, and get into the deep and dirty of who they are as an individual, how they contribute to themselves, to the world, to their family, they feel unseen, or actually they want to be unseen, so they maintain their weight. So when you start to pitch in all of the anxiety, the stress, um, any trauma that's from their background, then what we find is actually their body is in such a high state of fight or flight, and it's constant and relentless. They don't know any other way of being, that they've got all of the stress hormones, the neuroendocrine systems are just on high alert constantly. It's like, imagine having a smoke alarm in your kitchen, not a heat alarm, a smoke alarm. They've got a smoke alarm and it's just going off all the time saying danger, danger, danger. And they might come across as really gregarious, full of life, always the fun of the party. That seems to be a common factor as well, laughing at themselves before somebody else can laugh at them. So they control the environment by, putting these things out there. It's really quite fascinating to work with clients who present with these type of things. But actually, when they start to become themselves, it's quite a beautiful transition to see, because you're seeing a beautiful woman come out and be vulnerable and be honest and be recognized for who she really is. And what I found with clients who have high functioning anxiety but overeat is they want to squash the feelings. And because we hold such a lot of our feelings around our gut, it's our second brain, by putting more food in, it causes a stretch in the gut. And we can feel more satiated, more relaxed. Think about the Romans gorging when they lie around hedonistically. It's exactly the same, but in a much smaller environment.
In this sense of overachieving or high achieving, and possibly identifying with a sense of burnout, or possibly just identifying with some of the things you're talking about, what's one actionable strategy, practical thing that someone could do to break the cycle of burnout?
Well, I'll actually give you two. One, because we have to do it all the time, which is breathing. And the other one is a 90-second pause or reset. So the first one, I actually do it myself every day. I have a little reminder on my watch, comes up once every hour for 1 minute, and it just says breathe. So I sit for 1 minute, I breathe in for a count of 4, I hold for 1, and then I exhale slowly for 7. And that breath that you take in needs to be drawn down towards the belly button. It's not a shoulder breath. It's not one that comes into the top of here. So imagine a baby breathing when they lie in their cot. Their bellies rise and lower because they just pull it straight in. There's no restrictions. And over time, what that does is starts to tell your nervous system, actually, we feel okay. We feel safe, because it's impacting on the vagus nerve and the activity around that. And the second thing is the 90-second pause. When somebody asks you as a people pleaser, to do something, what you can do is stop for 90 seconds and say to yourself, do I actually have the capacity for this? And when you start to ask yourself questions, and the right questions, the brain goes looking for the right answer. It's like Google. You put in the wrong question, you're going to get the wrong answer. Will it move me any closer or further away to the life that I want? And can I celebrate what I just accomplished before rushing to the next thing? So there's 3 questions there that you could ask yourself. Gives you about 90 seconds, and it interrupts the automatic, oh, of course I'll do it. Oh, of course I'll get on with it. And just putting it the next thing on your to-do list. And it allows you to start to make intentional choices. It signals to the other person who's making the request, oh, there's a boundary here. Didn't notice that before. And it also allows you to establish, is this something of value to me that I need to be a part of, that I want to, connect with, or not?
And it really strikes me from what you described earlier of the very competent woman who gets everything done, is the person who's asked to do more. If you want something done, always ask a busy person, they say, don't they? So also it's kind of inserting a pause into that, I suppose, to allow you to take a step back, take a breath, analyze it, and decide whether actually that's something you need to do.
Yeah.
Great, really helpful.
And I've used that myself quite a lot.
So I know you talk about a lovely phrase. I love this: helping women unlock their genius, grace, and grit. That's a book title, surely, in that, isn't it?
Well, my husband keeps saying to me about writing a book, but it's about fitting it in. That's it's a completely different scenario, but that's my program framework, or one of them. I have 2 programs, but that's one that I use with women, professional women.
So can you tell me a bit more about what that means in practice? So genius, grace, and grit. What does that mean, and how can women kind of unlock that with your help?
So as women, we tend to generally focus on the grace side because, being seen as feminine, holding our feminine energy. We show empathy to others. We want to people please. We want to be kind. We want to be welcoming. And as a result, very often we hide our genius. We hide our creativity. We hide our intelligence and our intuition. And as women, if we bring those into our lives and the workplace, how much more powerful would that be? Now, as a professional woman myself, working in male-dominated environments, I pretty much always worked from my grit side, hid my genius and very rarely brought out the grace. And when I looked back at my career and the careers of some very, very successful women, what I realized is they had not only a balance of all of these, was flexibility and some fluidity between the three of them. So they could draw on each of them as they needed. They didn't have a high dependency on one, which meant, if, for instance, they were working with a group of people and they needed to show some empathy, they needed to have self-reflection in their leadership style, that would buy them more relationship status with their teams. If they were purely genius, they just wouldn't get there because they would be working as a soloist. It just wouldn't happen. So they might have really good levels of intelligence, they might be very intuitive, but if they can't communicate it, it's worth nothing. And then, like I said, working from grit myself, I could be a very tough taskmaster on myself and others, and not always recognize when they'd had enough, when they were done, when there was nothing left. So I didn't show a lot of empathy, and it took me a long time to recognize that. And a lot of feedback. I had a lot of feedback from people who worked for me who said, well, you're very firm and fair, but sometimes we can't always keep up with you. I just think, why not? Why can't you keep up with me? Come on. Maybe that bottle of wine a night was doing more than I thought. But it is about leaning in with empathy. It is about acknowledging other people's ideas, working collaboratively, not only in the workplace, but also at home. So if you have a partner, if you have a family, then being the person that always does everything doesn't allow them to have autonomy in their own lives. It doesn't recognize their skills, their contribution. So actually, in quite a way, you're downplaying their contributions and not allowing them to be fully themselves in that environment. And we all do it. We all take advantage of somebody who will do everything because it's just easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you can move fluidly between all three and be comfortable with it, then you allow somebody else to rise. So I think by having that ability, allowing other people and other women in particular to rise with you, you become quite unstoppable. And people will always gravitate towards you and want to be part of your team. They will want to support you. They will want to go on that journey with you. So I think that's where it came from, and that's where it's continuing to grow. It's gathering quite a bit of momentum at the moment with women, particularly around International Women's Day that we've just recently had. So I did a couple of talks on it and they went down exceptionally well because women started to recognise, yeah, I'm always expected to be in grit, or I'm always expected to be in grace. And actually, that's not who I am. I am so much more.
Starting to bring this together, if as women, we prioritized our mental health and emotional health more, how do you feel, and from your experience, how have you seen that change women's lives as well as the lives of those around them?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, women are the unseen backbone of businesses, families, communities. You only have to look back to the war years, who was running the country. Even though there was a man at the helm, it was the women running the country. And I think for too long, we've been conditioned to put ourselves last, and we've been told that to keep achieving, we have to keep serving, meaning we have to keep pushing. But it's all about balance and priorities and what stage of life that we're in. And I think as women, if we prioritised our well-being, we wouldn't see as many cases of burnout and stress-related illnesses. And with anxiety, I think we'd see a real positive shift in leadership and innovation and impact, particularly in some of the STEM industries. So as women, when we're well, we show up differently. We set better boundaries, we lead with confidence, and we stop playing small. We get off the small stage and we start playing in the big boys leagues. And that ripple effect extends all the way through workplaces, families, and more importantly, future generations. And just going back to what you said about a book, with Genius, Grace and Grit, the one I've been toying with for quite a while is How to Stop Your Daughter People Pleasing, because it all starts with us. It doesn't start with the younger generation. It starts with us. We have to set that example. We have to value ourselves, and we have to honour our own needs. And I think the world needs women to thrive. It absolutely has to. So each of us, deciding that our health, our peace and our power are non-negotiable, then by doing that, that sends the message to everybody around us that we are of value, that we are important.
Yeah, we're not down the pecking order of what's important. Yeah. So, Joy, if someone were to come to you for some health coaching sessions, could you explain just a little bit about what you offer and what that would look like?
So initially, it would always start with a discovery call, which is around 30 minutes. Sometimes they might run a little longer, but generally 30 minutes to make sure I can actually support, any future clients in their health ventures. And also that I'm the right coach for that person, because sometimes there has to be a relationship. It's not just about, I'm going to tell you what to do, because that's not what coaches are there for. If that's all working and that's okay, then we move on to, initially there could be a 4-week package, which is a quick start to get someone up and running and to see if coaching is for them, because it's a big investment financially, it's a big investment time-wise. And then I have 2 bigger programs, which are 12 weeks to 6 months. So depending on the needs of the client, those are modified to fit their needs and obviously their payment plans, schedules, etc. So it's client driven, client dependent. There are common factors amongst all of the programs, which are around the 5 pillars of functional medicine. So we look at sleep, stress, movement, nourishment and relationships. Make sure those are all in order, because if they're not, then actually everything else will fall by the wayside anyway. So making sure that there's good habits in place, tweaking them where they need to be tweaked, enhancing them, and helping that person become that best version of themselves, that woman to be the healthiest version of herself.
Yeah, it's all in balance, isn't it? All those things are interrelated and overlap and self-perpetuate. Yeah. So where can someone find you?
So I have a profile on vitalhealthcoaches.com. So you can just put in a search on either high functioning anxiety or Joy Donnell, and I'll pop up there. You'll see my nice smiling face.
Great. Okay. It has been a joy. I'm sure you hear that a lot. It's been really fascinating as a woman and as a business owner and entrepreneur to chat to you and to hear your insights today. So I've really valued our chat. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and look forward to hearing more from you in due course.
That's great, Claire. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I think the work that you're doing is very, very important, getting the health coaching message out there. So thank you for that.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. For more on how a health coach can support you in your health journey, please go to vitalhealthcoaches.com.